Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah and it is almost September. So we all know what that means. It's time for another TBR. So let me preface this by saying that I failed epically in my August TBR. My kids went back to school. My son started baseball for the first time, so we're still trying to figure out what the heck that's gonna look like schedule wise. And that has taken up a lot of my time. I live an hour out of town, and so it takes me between 45 minutes and an hour to get back and forth to town, to the grocery store, the games, everything. So that takes a lot of time as well. I'm still getting used to audiobooks, getting acquainted with them, and don't always have an audiobook going. I am trying to change that to try and help with this a little bit, but it's a process. It really is. It's kind of getting back into the swing of things, and things have been crazy, and it's been a month. So I am going to cut myself a little bit of slack. I will tell you that right now. And so let's go through the books that I had and what I did or did not read. So the first prompt that I had was a historical fiction, and for that I chose Was Anastasia. I read 50 pages in this book, and what I read was fine. I would like to continue it. However, it was just not what I was in the mood for. This is a slower paced book. Obviously, it's historical fiction. They're not always fast paced. But this is following a couple different timelines with Anna, who is supposedly Anastasia Romanoff. She's Russian royalty, basically. And the book starts out, like at the very beginning, there is a fair warning that kind of prefaces the book that says, if I tell you what happened that night in Ekaterinburg, I'm not sure how you say that, I will have to unwind my memory, all the twisted coils, and lay it in your palm. It will be the gift and the curse I bestow upon you, a confession for which you may never forgive me. Are you ready for that? Can you hold this truth in your hand and not crush it like the rest of them? Because I do not think you can. I do not think you are brave enough. But, like so many others through the years, you have asked, am I truly Anastasia Romanoff, a beloved daughter, a revered icon, a Russian Grand Duchess? Or am I an imposter, a fraud, a liar, a thief of another woman's legacy? That is for you to decide, of course. Countless others have rendered their verdict. Now it is your turn. But if you want the truth, you must pay attention. Do not daydream or drift off. Do not speak or interrupt. You will have your answers, but first you must understand why the years have brought me to this point, and why such loss has made the journey necessary. When I am finished, and only then, will you have the right to tell me who I am. Are you ready? Good. Let us begin. And I had to put a note in here that I absolutely love that the book started this way. I thought it was a great way to start this book, that it's basically, this is what I'm saying, and I'm going to tell you the story, and then you can decide for yourself. And I really like it when books start out this way. It's something that's just very intriguing to me. There was kind of that in everyone in my family has killed someone, that it's like, okay, this is what happened, this is how I'm going to tell it, I'm going to be straightforward with you, but this is how things went, and then you can see for yourself. And I really like that. There's just something about it that I really, really like. And so I'm very intrigued to pick this book up again. But for right now, it's just, like I said, it's just not what I was in the mood for. So I did not read this one, technically. The next book that I had on my TBR, and this is where it begins, where I'm kind of cutting myself some slack. The next book that I had on my TBR was for a new to me author, and I had Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I didn't start this. I didn't even try to start this. However, I do have a book that I read this month that is by an author that I've never read from before, and that is The Love of My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood. So I was supposed to read this, but I did read this, and so I'm going to count it. I'm going to count it, because otherwise I'm going to have like a gigantic 12-book TBR, and we all know Orilium is this month as well that I want to participate in. So instead of reading this one, I did read this one though. And so I'm going to count it. I'm going to give myself a pass and I'm going to count it. This book is following Delphi, who has a really unfortunate accident and she chokes on a burger and she dies. Then when she goes to the afterlife, she ends up meeting a guy in the waiting room that supposedly would be or would have been her soulmate. They had a special connection, would have been her soulmate. And so she makes a deal with basically the afterlife therapist, I think is what she's called. She makes a deal with her that she will get 10 days to go back to Earth, hunt down this man who she only knows his first name, and in London, of all places, and get him to kiss her, and then she can live her life. But if that doesn't happen, then she will once again die. So it's kind of like The Good Place meets The Little Mermaid kind of thing. I had a great time with this. I gave this book 5 stars. I had to think for a second. I gave this book 5 stars. I had a great time with it. I think that if you like The Good Place, that you're going to enjoy this book. It has the same kind of like dry-ish humor, and that she's just kind of a klutz, and she has she has no clue where to start. Like, how do you even start in finding some random person in London? And it's all about her journey of like traveling around and trying to hunt this guy down over that 10 days and whether or not she finds him. And I had a great time with this book, so I gave it 5 stars. Now, the next book that I had on my TBR was for the prompt adapted. And for that, I chose The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. And this one, I read far enough that it counts. I read up to part 2 in this book, which was about 150 pages. However, the night before I started this book, we watched the movie. And like, we didn't fully pay attention to the movie. It happens with us a lot. We put a movie in, we don't fully pay attention to it. But I watched enough of that movie that when I went to read this, I was so bored with this book. I felt like not a whole lot happened, and I felt like what did happen was exactly like what happened in the movie. So like, I wasn't really missing much, or what I saw of the movie. And so I was just really, really bored with it, and I didn't want to continue. So like I said, I got up to part 2, which was like 150 pages into it, and I am DNFing this book. It counts. I did read over 100 pages, but I don't know. I'm sure it's fantastic, and I'm sure a lot of people absolutely loved it because of the Hunger Games, but I just felt like I was super bored with it, and it's kind of one of those that like, if you watch the movie, you kind of get what this book is, and that's kind of all there is to it. So I wanted to read this before I watched the movie. Turns out we put the movie in and then I started this, which kind of messed me up. But either way, I'm sure it's fantastic. It's just not something that I was overly interested in at this time, and I don't think I'm going to be, because like I said, I think once you see the movie, you kind of know all you need to know. So I did DNF this one, but it does count towards my TBR. The next book that I had on my TBR was for my highest rated historical fiction. So once again, I had The Women by Kristen Hanna on my TBR, and I still didn't read it. I haven't been in that mood for historical fiction. I want to read this book, and I know that I'm going to love this book because Kristen Hanna's writing is incredible, and her take on the Vietnam War, I'm very excited to read. However, I have not been in the mood for this, and so it just didn't happen. Guys, it didn't happen. There's no swap out for this one. It's just straight up that it didn't happen. Same with Was Anastasia. I don't have a swap out for it. It just didn't happen. I'm not in the mindset for historical fiction at the moment, and that just is how it goes. I am more in the mood for some fantasies and some thrillers and some romances, and that's just kind of where I'm at. So there's another one that I did not finish. I did not start it. I just didn't. The next one that I had on my TBR was a random letter title pick for the letter N. And for that one, I chose Not a Happy Family by Sherry Lapina. This one is a thriller. I did read this one. Unfortunately, I gave it 3 or 3.5 stars. I felt like this book had so much potential, like crazy potential. Everybody in this book was untrustworthy. Everybody had motive, and everybody had reasons for doing what they were doing. But I felt like the ending of this book was an afterthought, to be completely honest with you. I felt like the ending was a complete cop-out, because you get to, I don't know, maybe 5 chapters from the end. And these are really short chapters, like just a couple of pages. You get to like 5 chapters or so from the end, and it's like, oh yeah, this person did it. And that's it. That's it. There was no reasoning behind it other than just the fact that, well, I guess it was like a lot of things that played into the fact, like went over in this book multiple times. But it was just, there was not really any extra details with it or anything like that. I just didn't like this one. I thought there was so much potential and there was so much family drama. And like I said, everybody was untrustworthy. Everybody had motives. So there was so much potential for this book and so many ways that it could have just really just gone off the charts and gone crazy, but it didn't. And so I was so bummed, and my rating reflects that. So yeah, I did read this one. Unfortunately, it was not a win. I do want to try more from Sherry Lapina. This just didn't do it for me, you know. And thrillers, I've said this before, just because one thriller by an author didn't work for you doesn't mean that another won't be a 5-star read. So I want to try more from this author. I did like her writing. I did like the short chapters. It just didn't cut it for me. And so I'm super bummed about it. But I did read it. The next book that I had on my TBR was for the prompt Gifted. And for that one I chose Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I read not very much of this. I read like the prologue and I started the first chapter, but I just didn't get very far into it. However, I do have a swap out for this one because my dad, for my birthday, if you've watched my June and July book haul, my dad got me Middle of the Night by Riley Sager for my birthday. So this book was gifted and I did read this book. Unfortunately, once again, this book was 3.5 stars. Did not like this book either. So I did end up swapping them out. I am going to get back to Warbreaker though. So hold tight and I will talk about that later. But I didn't read this one, but I did read this one. So I'm going to count it. Like I said, I'm cheating. I'm swapping them out. But I did read this one. Like I said, I gave it 3.5 stars. I love Riley Sager's writing. I love his books. This one just wasn't it. This book was like The Chalk Man by C.J. Tudor, but so much more boring. This was not it for him at all. And unfortunately, like, it sucks. I'm so bummed about it. But I did read this one. I will buy the next Riley Sager. That's not going to change. But this just didn't do it for me. So I did read this one, and I'm going to swap this one out as Gifted rather than Warbreaker. The next book that I had, sorry, I have my notebook over here that has everything written down. So the next book that I had was a Hannah pick, and the one that she chose for me was In the Shadow Garden. This one is a cozy fantasy book, and I did read this one, and I gave it 4 stars. I really liked this book. It's basically all about how this family they run a tea shop and they have a garden that they tend to, and they basically can take people's pain out of them gradually, and they use that to infuse magic and whatnot into the garden. The garden basically like feeds off of the town's pain. There's another family that they are rivals with, that they make whiskey or they make bourbon. Same difference. They make bourbon, and they have an ongoing rivalry, and it's basically how that rivalry is, and the entire town has lost an entire summer of their memories, and nobody knows what happened. Nobody knows why. nobody even realizes that they actually are missing that huge chunk of time until it's actually like they're confronted with it. And it's how they go about trying to recover those memories, find out what happened, what's going on. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the writing was really good. I thought the storyline was really good. I thought the little bit of a twist at the ending was really interesting. And you were just really rooting for this family. This one had multiple generations that we were looking at, the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter. And I thought that was a really great take on it. And I don't know, I just really like this one. This one was just one of those cozy fantasies with the magic it was basically, it's a contemporary romance but with magic. And so I never know really how to categorize these because they're not completely fantasy, but they're like magical realism, I guess. And I really enjoyed this one. And then my bonus book for the month was an Instagram pick, and for that I got Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I did read this one. I gave it 4 stars. And I really enjoyed this one as well. I thought it was just very atmospheric, just like Alex E. Harrow's writing has been for me in her other books that I've read. And I really, really liked it. I thought it got a little bit slow because it felt like it took me a long time to get through this book. I wasn't flying through it. I wasn't eating it up, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was just a very slow, atmospheric kind of pace, and you really rooted for the characters to kind of figure things out for themselves and figure out what's going on and at the end of the day. And so I really liked this one. I love Alex E. Harrow's writing. Her writing is so lyrical and beautiful, and she just creates this whole incredible atmosphere. And so I really enjoyed this book, and I'm so glad that I finally read it. And honestly, these books really kicked off like my fall vibes, which you will really see come up in my September TBR. So overall, with my swap outs, because yes, I am cheating, I did my TBR and then I went book shopping for my birthday. So that also played a big part in my reading because I was wanting to get to my new books as soon as possible. And so I kind of put these on the back burner. But that being said, with the books that I swapped out and the books that I read, the 2 that are the main ones that I did not read were The Women and I Was Anastasia. So I'm doing 2 extra throws for this month, and I'm going to give myself a pass on the other ones. With that giant thing being said, I also am wanting to participate in the Orilium Autumn Equinox. Like I said, I have my books, I think, figured out for that, so I will go over that at the end. I am going to be doubling up with my prompts for the month as much as I possibly can. And so yeah, with that being said, let's get into the first throw. Okay, so my first prompt, I got right in the middle as usual. It was a Marmy pick and between 350 to 400 pages. So I found 3 books that I was interested in reading in the month of September, and I sent a picture to my mom and I asked her to choose. So the 3 books that I had her choose between, I don't know if you could see this, I sent her this picture. The 3 books that I had her choose between were The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, Mother-Daughter Murder Night by Nina Simon, and Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and asked her to choose. The one that she chose was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This one is following a girl who works, I don't know if she's an editor or... So it says that she is a cutthroat literary agent. And her sister go on a vacation. And when they're on that vacation, she keeps running into some guy that she knows from the publishing world, the book world. And keeps running into him. And then they fall in love somehow. And that's really all I know about this book. I got this one because I've heard that if you are an older sister, then you will probably love this book. And I'm not the older sister, I'm the younger sister, but I am really excited to see that play out with the sister dynamic in this as well as the romance. So I'm very excited to read this one. And this is the first book that I will be picking up for September. so the next prompt that I got is set in a different country. And one book that I am very, very, very excited to read, and it's kind of like my end of summer, my last hurrah to summer, because it is still a summery book, but it takes place in mainly Mexico, and that is Raiders of the Lost Heart by Joe Segura. This one is a treasure hunting romance book that I don't even know any more than that off the top of my head right now. I knew the premise of this at one point when I read it over and over on Book Outlet, but I've since kind of forgotten. All I know is that it's like a treasure hunting romance, and since I read something wilder, I am looking for that kind of a book again. I'm so excited to read this. It says, archaeologist Dr. Socorro Corey Maya has a bone to pick, literally. It's been Corey's life goal to lead an expedition deep into the Mexican jungle in search of a long-lost remains of her ancestor Chamali, an ancient warrior of the Aztec Empire. When she is invited to join an all-expensive paid dig to do just that, Corey is sure it's too good to be true, and she's right. As the world-renowned expert of Chamali, Corey should, by rights, be leading this quest, not sharing the glory with her disgustingly handsome nemesis. But Dr. Ford Matthews has been finding new ways to best her since they were in grad school. Ford certainly isn't thrilled either with his life in shambles. The last thing he needs is a reminder of their rocky past. But as the dig begins, it becomes clear they'll need to work together. A thief is lurking around their campsite, forcing the pair to keep their discoveries and lingering attraction under wraps. With money-hungry artifact smugglers, the Mexican authorities, and lies between them closing in, there's only one way this all ends: explosively. So I'm very, very excited to read this book. And it's, like I said, it's kind of my last hurrah to summer, because I know this one's going to be a summery book, but I wanted to read it before it gets too much into fall. Alright, so my next prompt, I got a book tour favorite, and once again, I looked to Sid Bookworm, and I looked at her mid-year freakout tag, and one of her favorite books so far this year, her best sequel of the year, was Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage. I read the first book a couple months ago, and I really, really liked it. I was a little bit cringy, but I had a really good time with it. I really liked it. I thought it was really cute. And so I picked this one up for my birthday, and I'm really excited to read it. And so since she has this on as her best sequel of the year so far, I took that recommendation, and I'm going to be reading Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage for my booktuber favorite. The next prompt that I got was an A to Z author surname, and when I spun the wheel, the letter that I got was W, and I immediately knew what book I wanted to read. And that book is The Last Dreamwalker by Rita Woods. This one sounds so amazing. It says, family, magic, and secrets that refuse to stay buried. Two women are inextricably linked across the centuries by an extraordinary power passed from generation to generation of Gulagichi women. So this book is basically that she somehow ends up reuniting with her aunts, I believe, and finding out that she is a dream walker and whatever that entails, and she is part of it, and she learns her heritage, and she has those family connections. And I don't know, I don't know a ton about it, but it sounds amazing, and I'm so excited to read this book. This is one I just got off of Book Outlet after watching it for months, and so I'm really excited to read this. The next prompt that I got is a Wildcard. And because I am in those spooky vibes right now, and I want to start getting into the fall books and the spooky season vibes, the book that I chose was The Haunting of Ashburn House by Darcy Coates. I don't know anything about this book. All I know is it's haunted house and it's by Darcy Coates. And I really, really want to read a Darcy Coates book because I've heard amazing things about her books. and I wanted something kind of haunted and spooky, and so I'm really, really excited to read this one. I'm gonna go in kind of blind, so I'm not gonna read you the synopsis of this one. Like I said, all I know is that it's a haunted house, and yeah, so I'm very excited to put this one on my TBR. My next prompt was a 3-word title and a most recent purchase. So my most recent purchase, or 2 purchases I should say, was The Phoenix Keeper and this book, The Empire of Shadows. This is by Jacqueline Benson. This is another one that's like a treasure hunting romance. And on the back, it literally says, Empire of Shadows is the first book in Jacqueline Benson's smart swashbuckling Raiders of the Arcana series. Read it now and dive into a rip-roaring historical fantasy adventure, perfect for fans of Romancing the Stone and The Mummy. So if you know me at all, you know that Romancing the Stone is one of my all-time favorite movies. It is an 80s movie that's basically like, if you've seen The Lost City with Sandra Bullock, you know the premise of Romancing the Stone, but Romancing the Stone is an 80s movie, so it's automatically a million times better. And I absolutely love that movie, and I love The Mummy. And so when I seen that in the description of this book, I had to get it, and I had to get it right now. So I'm very excited to say that I'm going to be putting this one on my TBR for my most recent purchase and a 3-word title. I don't know, it's basically, it sounds like Jungle Cruise and The Lost City and like all those books. It sounds exactly like that. And so I think I'm gonna love it. I have 2 treasure hunting romances on this TBR and I can't wait. I'm so excited. On that note though, for a 3-word title, if you don't know, I keep track of all of my throws and said from the beginning of the year that once I hit a prompt 3 times that I have to add in an extra throw. Well, this is the 3rd time that I've gotten 3-word title. This finally happened, guys. This is the first month that it happened, so I'm really surprised that it took this long. But I have to add in an extra throw. So for my extra throw, I got Highly Anticipated, and that was a pretty easy choice for me. And the book that I decided to go with was The Measure by Nikki Erlich. This is kind of a dystopian thriller that everybody wakes up one day and gets a string, long or short, that basically shows them how long they are going to live for and what they do with that information. I've heard this book is really, really interesting. I've heard that it's amazing. I've heard that it follows a lot of different perspectives, which I'm a little nervous about. But I've been watching this book since it came out, wanting to get it and read it and try it. And I absolutely love this cover so much. It's amazing. And so I'm really excited to read it and have my own thoughts on it. Like, I've heard amazing things, and so I'm really excited for it. But I'm excited to see what my thoughts are going to be with this one and what people are going to do with that kind of an information, or that kind of information of how long your life will be. So moving on, my next prompt I got was another Hannah pick. So 2 months in a row, she gets to choose a book for me. And this one is actually one that we are going to be reading together, just like in the Shadow Garden. And that is The Witches of Bone Hill. I actually bought this book specifically for her and I to read together because this book is a sister magical realism, fantasy, cozy, fall vibes kind of book. So it says, Cordelia Bones' meticulously crafted life and big city career are crashing down around her thanks to a philandering husband with criminal debts. So when her older, carefree sister Eustace calls to inform her the great aunt they never met had died and they must travel to a small Connecticut town to deal with the estate, she sees an opportunity to unload the house and save herself. But once there, the sisters learn they are getting much more than they bargained for. The Victorian mansion they stand to inherit is bound in a dynasty trust controlled by their late aunt's aging attorney, who insists they retain and inhabit the house, but keeps them in the dark about the peculiar rituals of their ancestors. And to complicate matters, a sexy, tattooed groundskeeper with a shrouded past refuses to leave the carriage house, and a crypt full of dead relatives looms the property line. Soon they come face to face with a haunting family secret, the truth of what happened to their mother, and the enemy that's been stalking their family from the shadows for generations. In a twisting torrent of terror and blood, the sisters must uncover the power within them to heal their fractured relationship, reverse their mysteriously declining health, and claim the lineage they wanted to escape, but now must embrace if they are to survive Bone Hill. So this book sounds amazing. I'm really excited to see the dynamic between these two sisters and what happens with this house, because this house seems like it might possibly have a little bit of a mind of its own. I seen the description of this one and it just really caught my attention, and so I immediately sent it to my sister and said that her and I should read it together. And so she's going to read it with me, and I'm probably going to annotate the shit out of it, and we're probably going to pass it on to my mom, and I'm really excited for it. And last but not least, the prompt that is actually really difficult to find a book for, and that is published in July. Luckily for me though, this time it was really easy to make that choice, because on July 23rd, I've talked about it a little bit in my other videos, on July 23rd, a book came out that I had to make sure that I went in and got it like as soon as possible. And that is The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love by India Holton. This is the first in a new series that she's coming out with that is basically phoenixes and romance and magic and all kinds of fun things. So I've read The League of Gentlewomen Witches by India Holton, the first book in that series, and I had a great time with that book. It was so much fun. It was just kind of one of those that you go along for the ride and you have a good time. This one, I'm so excited for. I'm so excited for this book. It says, rival ornithologists hunt through England for a rare magical bird in this historical fantasy rom-com reminiscent of Indiana Jones, but with manners, tea, and helicopter parasols. So once again, we have Indiana Jones vibes. Apparently that's the theme this month. Says Beth Pickering is on the verge of finally capturing the rare death whistler bird when Professor Devon Lockley swoops in, stealing both her bird and her imagination like a villain. Albeit a handsome and charming villain, but that's beside the point. As someone highly educated in the ruthless discipline of ornithology, Beth knows trouble when she sees it, and she is determined to keep her distance from Devon. For his part, Devon has never been more smitten than when he first sets eyes on Professor Beth Pickering. She's so pretty, so polite, so capable of bringing down a fiery, deadly bird using only her wits. In other words, an angel. Devon understands he must not get close to her, however, since they're professional rivals. When a competition to become Birder of the Year by capturing an endangered Caladrius bird is announced, Beth and Devon are forced to team up to have any chance of winning. Now, keeping their distance becomes a question of one bed or two, but they must take the risk because foul play is afoot, and they can't trust anyone else. For all may be fair in love and war, but this is ornithology. So I'm so excited to read this book. I think it sounds amazing, and phoenixes are just one of those things that magic, phoenixes, magical zoos, all that kind of stuff that like Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, like they all give off those vibes, and it's such a buzzword for me, and I'm so excited to read this book and start out in this series. I know I'm going to be shooting myself in the foot because I don't know when the next book is coming out, but this one just came out, so it's going to be a while, but I'm so excited to read it and I can't wait. Okay, so those are my prompts for the month of September. Now let me pull up my notes for Orilium, because I also have stuff for that. So the career that I'm going for is the Aldea Excavationist, I think. But I have to get a D in Animal Studies and a Q in Restoration. So the first prompt for the Animal Studies is to have a phoenix on the cover or in the title. And so for that one, I'm going to be doubling up, and I'm going to count The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love for that prompt. Because once again, I'm so excited to read it, and it has a phoenix on the cover. Right there. If you can see it with the beautiful foiling on the cover of this book. But there is a phoenix on the cover, so I'm going to count that one. For a Q level, it has to be I have to have a standalone. And for that one, I decided to choose Raiders of the Lost Heart by Joe Segura for a standalone. The next one I have is a cover change. And for that one, I am using Book Lovers because I've seen multiple different covers of this book. Now, the next one for restoration, I have to have a night sky on the cover for an O in restoration. And for this one, I am going to be using The Witches of Bone Hill because you have the house and then you have the stars and whatnot up above. Okay, sorry, my battery died. I also technically can use The Haunting of Ashburn House because you have the house and then you have the moon and the trees back behind it. And so I could also use this one. And then for Q in restoration, for I believe it's Qualified, the book I'm going to be reading, it has to have a poisonous plant on the cover or in the title. And for this one, I am going to add in The Foxglove King by Hannah Winton. I don't know really anything about this book, except for that it's a fantasy romance. It says, in this gilded, gothic, and romantic new epic fantasy series from New York Times bestselling author Hannah Winton, a young woman's secret power to raise the dead plunges her into the dangerous world of the sainted king's royal court. Laura has been living by her wits since she was a child, running poisons for the cartel that took her in, avoiding the attention of the law, and keeping her affinity for death magic a secret, because mortem is a rare and illicit commodity, and using it could mean death. When a job goes wrong and Laura is captured by the sainted king's warrior monks, she expects a pyre. But King August has a different plan. Entire villages on the outskirts of the country have been dying overnight, seemingly at random. Laura can either use her magic to find out what's happening or die, and the king suspects his arrogant, handsome heir is behind it. Thrust into a lavish court where no one can be believed and even fewer can be trusted, Laura must navigate an intricate web of politics, religion, and forbidden romance and solve the king's mystery, a mystery more dangerous and twisted than Laura can even imagine. So it sounds really good. I'm very excited to try this one out and see what I think of it. I've heard of Hannah Winton before, but I don't really know anything about her other books. All I know is that it's like a Red Riding Hood retelling kind of thing. But I got this one and I'm very excited to read this one as well. And that will be it for my Orilium readathon. So, oh yeah, and I'm also going to include Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson as my bonus book for this month. I do still really want to get to it if I have a chance to. I want to read it. It's one that my sister gave to me. It sounds really intriguing. The prologue got me super interested in picking this book up. So I am going to have this one as my bonus book for the month. Now, the bonus book doesn't really mean anything still because I haven't figured that out. But if you have any suggestions for what my bonus book can be for, like a reason behind it, other than just having an extra book on the TBR that I don't particularly need. If you have any suggestions, I would love to hear those. Ways that I can work that in, including a bonus book in some way or another, and actually have a use for it. That would be fantastic. But for right now, this is my bonus book. Not that it really means anything, but this is just another one that I basically want to get to this month for no particular reason other than I just want to read it. All in all, we have 9 books on the TBR, plus my bonus book. So this is my TBR for September. I'm really excited. There's a lot of like romance and cozy type fantasy, and so I'm really excited for all of these. And the question is, do you think that I can do it? Because I also have these, plus this one, plus all my vlogs I'm working on, which we're not even going to talk about that. But I have quite the ambitious TBR planned for September, but I'm so excited to get to all of these books. Are there any of these that you have read and enjoyed, or ones you think that I'm really going to enjoy and that I should prioritize? Please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe down below as well. And I have lots of vlogs coming and a lot of plans as usual. And hopefully I have enough hours in the day to actually read and get some of those plans into action. Yeah, once again, if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe down below, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!